Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast with me, Pete Tigers. My guest today, I've got to admit, I'm a little bit of a fanboy. Todd Moen has made some amazing fly fishing films. I think he's shaped how many of us look at fly fishing and how we view it as well. So I'm really pleased to be talking to him about his fishing career, about filmmaking, and about Catch Magazine. Think you're going to enjoy this one. Todd, it's great to be speaking with you today. I'm greatly honoured to have you along on the Fly Culture Podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Pete. Thanks for having me on today. That's awesome.
I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. And I know we've been trying to tie this up for a little bit. And you've been an incredibly busy man. What have you been up to?
Well, let's see, summertime. So I've been kind of all over the Northwest. I haven't done any far off travels this summer. But I am very fortunate that I live in Oregon State. I'm a day's drive from Montana, Idaho. So I'm always busy.
That sounds perfect to me. So where exactly are you based then? You mentioned, is that Oregon State or is that Oregon the state?
Yeah, Oregon the state. So I live in Central Oregon. So I'm about 3 hours away from Portland, Oregon, and from the West Coast. I mean, I can get to the coast of Oregon in about 4 hours. It's a 4-hour drive west, but I'm kind of on the other side of the Cascade Range in the high desert area. So it's a more dry climate. I'm right on the edge of the mountain. So if I drive another, half an hour west or east, I'm in desert, full on desert. So I kind of have it all right here. It's pretty cool.
So what does that mean from a fishing perspective? And do you have somewhere you consider your home water?
Yeah, so we have a lot of lakes here, which is I've kind of fallen in love with the more lake fishing, the stillwater fishing over the years since I've lived here. I moved out here from Montana, where it was, Montana offers a lot of great lake fishing too. But the rivers there and the small streams are what I kind of grew up, really cutting my teeth on. But here you have the small streams, you have the lakes. I think I probably spend more time the lake, like upper alpine lake fishing here, just like, especially with my kids. So my kids, when they were younger, like that was just the easier thing to do, right? You take them up, get them in a boat and you troll around and, it's all there automatically, right? So, but with the rivers we have nearby, I've had the Deschutes River, which is about an hour away. I mean, the middle of Deschutes is, I could get there in half an hour. And then we have the Metolius River. I don't know, that is pretty famous. It's a big spring-fed river. It's like a big spring creek, but that's only about 15 minutes away. Great hatches. I mean, it's world-class fishing. It's tough, but the water's crystal clear and it's beautiful. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here.
I've been very lucky to fish the Deschutes, and it was ringing in my ears when you said about desert, because mornings can be quite cold and then it suddenly gets quite warm, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it's a special place, and I remember catching some fish there as well, which was even better. So absolutely loved it. I won't tell the story about us getting pulled over from Oregon Airport within about 15 minutes of the hire car as well. So that's another story. But the policeman let us off for speeding as well. So we were very, very lucky from that point of view. But do you have it sounds like a nice mix of fishing, but do you have a favorite species?
Oh boy. One thing I didn't mention is, we've got, being on the coast, we've got salmon and steelhead too. So there's that opportunity, which is, that's just a huge bonus. My favorite species, I mean, I'm a trout. I love trout. Maybe I think it's because of my upbringing around, fishing the Montana streams, but really anywhere, everywhere you go, it seems like a lot of the places I go, there are trout around. And as far as the the beauty of that species is that they're very photogenic, right? They're just beautiful. Whether it's a rainbow, cutthroat, brown trout, I mean, they're great. They're fun to catch. They're fun to film. We have great West Slope cutthroat and Yellowstone cutthroat over, a day's drive. We've West Slope cutthroat, close by, Idaho, Montana. So those are beautiful fish, and they're just, they're beautiful fish to capture on a camera, right? Coming up, sipping a dry fly, nice and slow. That's great. Great stuff.
Nice. And how do you like to fish for them then? Would it be a dry fly for you, or do you like nymphs? Will you use a streamer? Do you use whatever's appropriate on the day? What is your favorite?
I mean, back 20 years ago, it was anything. I mean, I'll fish anything. I mean, if it's not happening, if there's not a hatch, if there's no insects, I'll go, I'll fish an indicator if I have to. But I think most of the time, lakes, definitely sinking lines, get down and get it done, right? Get to the depth of where the fish are. But if I'm on a river or creek, I'm probably, before I even get to the river, I'm setting up a, 10, 12 foot leader 5X with a dry fly. That's what I love to do. And especially when I'm back in Montana and I'm on those spring creeks around Twin Bridges, like where I work often. That's 14 to 16 foot leader and a PMD like Comparadun mayfly all day, or not all day, but during the hatch, 2 or 3 hours out of the day.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said then about the age, and when you were younger that you would use anything and whatever was appropriate. But do you think as we do get a little bit older that the catching isn't everything, and it is the being there and the way that you want to fish, and that's the way you choose to fish and enjoy it for exactly what it is?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you're younger, you're just trying to figure it out. You want to get numbers. You want to see the fish to see what they actually look like, right? Yeah, and yeah, I just remember back. I went to Montana State in Bozeman, and I nymphed most of the time there. It was just like I wanted to catch and catch and catch. But now I think I've figured out what I enjoy the most these days. And honestly, with running camera and actually watching fishing more than I actually fish, when I do get to fish, I want to spend my time doing what I really love. It's not like I don't spend a lot of time fishing. So when I am fishing, I want to really enjoy it, feel that rod, feel the line, watch, just enjoy the cast, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. So you've talked about Montana and growing up in Montana, and this sounds a pretty dumb question, but how did fly fishing come to you then on that basis?
Well, I was born in Montana, and I only lived there for a few years. So I actually grew up around the Seattle area, like in a small town outside of Seattle on the West Coast. But my dad was from Montana. He grew up in Montana, and he went to college at MSU. So we'd always go back to Bozeman. We'd always go back to Montana. So I grew up learning how to fish out there, even though I didn't live there year round. So I was on the rivers there every summer. We go out to the Yellowstone River, and it was all about just kind of figuring it out. Now, I did take, out in Washington when I was younger. I remember taking a couple classes with my dad, like casting on the river, a couple, fly casting. When really I didn't even know what fly fishing was, when I was 8 or 9. I was pretty young. But up until that, it was just spin fishing. My dad would go, and he wasn't a super avid fisherman, but he would take me out when we would go steelhead fishing, and it was all about catching and keeping whatever we caught, And I remember he'd be out, spin casting the spinning rod, and I'd be with my little. I remember having a little glass jar of Polsky's balls of fire eggs, and I'd sit between the rocks and just dangle those little eggs down in between the rocks and try to catch, like, they were probably like little salmon or steelhead smoke, just he'd be out there doing the real thing. And I'd be just like on the rocks, trying to do it. I don't know. I was too young to get out in the river, but yeah, I don't know. I grew up with a rod, fishing a bunch. So whether it was fly fishing, most of the time, well, when I was younger, it was all spin fishing, but yeah.
It sounds to me like you invented uranymphing, jigging those eggs up and down.
Yeah. It was fun.
Cool. So your dad obviously is a big part of your fishing life. Would you call him your mentor, or is there anyone else who had a impact on your fishing career?
Oh boy. Well, like I said, my dad wasn't a big angler, but the funny thing is he did have a fly rod that he got. He grew up in Great Falls, and he fished the Missouri as a kid a bunch. So, but he would do it. I don't know. These guys back then, back in the 60s, in the 70s, they would just go out, and I think it was more just going out and drinking beer and, not really. I don't know if they really knew what they were doing, but he definitely was the one that got me into fishing because, no, my mom wasn't into it. So it was definitely my dad. But like I said, we didn't fish a lot, but I do remember, going out with him. And then, as the years went on, we had a fly shop, Creekside Angling Company in Issaquah, that opened up when I was in high school in my hometown. That was a huge deal because I remember having to drive to get to a fly shop. It wasn't easy. And when they moved in, and they're still there, I met a lot of anglers through that fly shop. Just going into the local fly shop and meeting people. And I was younger, and then moving out to Bozeman for college. I met a lot of people that way, but a lot of it, like, definitely figuring out fly fishing. It was all just being on the water myself, getting tangled, getting knots, figuring out what works and what doesn't. So.
And what were you studying at university?
So when I went to Bozeman, I graduated with a graphic design degree, but it was right when it was interesting timing because back it was 98, 99, and like 2000. And it was right when all the digital, it was that big change of digital technology. So we had like these cameras that now rolled tape, but they were digital tape. And then you could it was the first year of Final Cut Pro that came out for Apple, the editing software. Because I was using this, I can't even remember. I was using this really just rough editing system with tape and stuff. It was, it was complicated, right? And so in school, when I was doing this, working on computers and graphic design, and those were really clunky back then, this editing software came out, and that just changed everything. So I was able to kind of take that degree. I'd still graduated with a graphic design degree, but I was working a lot with all this new digital technology of everything in school at the same time. So, yeah.
Really interesting for me, and a question I wanted to ask was, and one of the reasons I was fascinated to see what you studied at uni, just to get a sense of you as a creative, and you of course ticked the creative box there for me as well as what I know subsequently. But do you think creative people are born, or can you become creative? Is there something deep inside us that makes certain people creative and others not perhaps so?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I have a feeling that I think you're born with, I think a lot of people, I definitely think everybody can be creative, 100%. But I think it's definitely easier for some people than others. It's like picking up that's like a musician picking up a guitar. Like some people just have it. they can just do it. And others it's like anything really, like sports or in anything out there. But being creative, I think for some people it's just easier. For some, it takes a little bit of time and effort to get into that creative process. Whether, I did a lot of painting too. So, it just takes a lot of practice and patience. But, to be a good editor, that's a huge creative process. I think the patience factor is a big part of it. You got to just be patient, and a lot of people can't be patient. They don't have the patience to sit down and just be in front of the screen, and edit it out, and knock out a big long edit. And some people with fishing, they don't have the patience to sit out there and they don't even understand what it's like to try to catch a fish. They're just like, what are you doing out there? So I think it's more, you either get it or you don't. But I think everybody has a little bit in them, creativity. So.
Yeah, nice. Answered that perfectly for me. So when you were at university, was the camera coming stream side with you as well? Did you notice a point where the two sort of crossed or merged?
Yes, it's funny. I actually was in a film. Went into school thinking I was going to be go into the film part of it. Like the film school at MSU is pretty well known. And I took my first class there, and I was like, nope, it's not for me. I was not into it. I was the direction they were going. I was like, I wanted to learn about it, and that was like the process where I was, back in high school. I was, I had my parents' old cameras, and I'd play around with them. And so at that point, back before I even went to university, I knew that I was interested in it. So that's why I kind of chose this film class. But gosh, I bailed on that class within the first 10 days. And so the camera, definitely by the time I got to university, I'd have it with me all the time. And this wasn't a DSLR. This wasn't. I did have a little film camera, underwater camera that I took around for just taking stills, which I just found the other day, looking through a bin of stuff, which is funny. I showed my kids this thing, and they're like, "What is that?" but I actually did bring my digital 8 camera that I had back in the day when it was a tape, but it would be recording digital. So I would take that whenever I was out on the river in Montana. I'd take that wherever. You just never know. In Montana you can point the camera anywhere, and it's beautiful. So right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And was there a time then when you realised these things had merged, these worlds had collided, and then did you realise, actually, I might be able to earn some money from this? Was there a defining moment that suddenly, yeah, I can do something with this?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't know, but at the time, there was a lot of people, it was interesting. In Bozeman, I remember there was this film tour, the Banff Mountain Film Festival, which was a big tour even back then. And one of my a New Zealand video played that I had shot. It was one of my first videos where I went to New Zealand with my wife, and it was just kind of a trip. That it was something that we'd saved up for in college. And when we graduated, we went. And then from at the very end, I think in college, I understood that I had a knack for editing, not for the camera part, but for editing and putting things together. Right. But then once I saw some of my work up on a big theater screen, and I was getting all this feedback, and back in 99 and 2000 in Bozeman, no one else was doing this. It was whoa, this is really cool. This fishing footage is, how do you do that, right? And so from there, I think I had a pretty good idea that I could do something with this. I don't know what, but because the fly fishing industry and it's such a tiny little niche industry. I was like, well, how am I going to make it work? There's no budgets for anything. So, yeah.
And did that film though make you the go-to guy initially, subsequently, and currently as well for these sorts of films? Is it, like you say, it's a tiny little pastime we're involved with, but was there that sort of avalanche of people saying, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And did the internet sort of push that on a little bit further as well?
Yeah, when that film came out, I think I didn't get a lot of incoming like work messages about, hey, we want to hire you or whatever. So that didn't really happen. It was more just feedback of, wow, I've never really seen this before. This is great. Like, how do you like the how do you do it thing? Like, how do you capture a fish rising to eat? It's just like, and that's all about patience, right? And now today you see it like, it's like you're just blasted with all that content. It's like normal. It's just like overload. But I think more it was when I was so in I moved from Bozeman to Missoula. My wife got her master's in journalism at the University of Montana in Missoula. So what happened here was she was the reason we went. I had to find a job. And interestingly enough, the company that created the ESPN Fly Fishing the World TV shows, like the first fly fishing, they were the first fly fishing TV shows, Fly Fishing the World, Fly Fishing America. They did like, those were the two main ones. Well, they were based out of Missoula, Montana. So I remember walking in there. I remember walking in there with my camera and I showed him a tape and took me down to this like editing room of like cables going everywhere. It was legit. It was like the real deal, like production house on steroids. It was pretty amazing. And they looked at my stuff and they're like, "You're hired." And so that next year, that's when I learned a lot of what I know today as far as the production. I wasn't editing. I was just the camera operator on the road. I want to even call it a camera grunt. The camera operators aren't looked upon as like these sophisticated high level people. We're just like one job to the next. You go, you're on the road, you get it done, you're out, you're to the next place. Like you get home, you clean your camera gear, and then you're on the road to the next place. So I was all over the place for it was like a year and a half. I learned a lot about production, what works, what doesn't, what works around fishing, what doesn't. And it's one of the reasons why I probably like working on my own without a production crew, because of all the things that I saw go kind of south, or all the things that weren't able to happen because there was just too many people trying to get fishing content done. Right. It's hard. You got to be, just traveling to some of these places. Like if you're a one-man crew, you're going to be able to do it. If you have an extra person, that makes it hard, especially with flights and especially when you're on a little plane or whatever, helicopter or whatever. So anyway, you could go on and on about that.
That was an amazing time, and I'm trying to think. Is that we of course didn't get many fishing programs over here, but would it be the one with Conway Bowman? Would that be the program?
Conway. I didn't do a show with Conway Bowman. Came on after that, and I think he was working. So the production company was Barrett Productions.
John Barrett, wasn't it?
Yeah, John Barrett. So Conway came on. I think he did some Outdoor Life Network OLN shows, and that might have been Fly Fishing America, but I can't remember. Yeah. I didn't work with him. So,
Yeah, got you.
but he was definitely part of that. I think he worked with that staff
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, that rings an absolute bell. So I know. I wonder the ones with John Barrett. Did he host it then?
Yeah, so John
Yeah,
Barrett was the host of Fly Fishing the World. So that was kind of the keystone, the cornerstone of that whole thing. He created the Fly Fishing the World, and then he did the Fly Fishing America. He wasn't the host on Fly Fishing America, but Fly Fishing the World was like his baby. You know, he had taken all kinds of very famous people, musicians, actors, actresses all over the world. So yeah, that's pretty neat.
nice, nice. So if I'm feeling down or need a fishing fix, I invariably turn to your videos on YouTube. There's a wide range of species to look at. It's a large catalogue, but have you one that you're especially fond of?
Good question. And it's funny, after like 20, I was thinking about this. It's going on, I think, 19 years now, of Catch Magazine, which I can't even believe. But there's videos that I forget about now, and I like them all, and definitely is the way the editing has progressed and changed. It's crazy to think back. The first videos were like 4 minutes long, and I think my longest video is like 24 minutes or something, which is really, really long, but it just had to be that way. But I think, one of my, gosh, I have a lot of favorite videos. I don't know, the early videos. I think, working with Brian O'Keefe has been, that's, definitely one angler that I look up to. He and I did some pretty neat stuff. And one of the reasons why they were so cool is that we would just go out and we knock it out like in a day or two. There was that's the other thing about learning about the production with these big production companies. It's like we would just go out, we'd have a good idea of we try to get the weather right. And we had a good idea of where we were going, but we had you never have any idea of what's going to happen out there. I don't care who you are. Like, Mother Nature is going to set the stage no matter what. So we were able to do some really cool videos just locally. We had one Alpine Bass. You guys have all probably seen that one, where he's riding around my old Honda Trail 110 bike, with the float tube on his back. I mean, that's kind of legendary. And the bass fishing was incredible. That always is. Alpine Bass was a really early highlight. The video I did with my son Charlie, Travels with Charlie, for coho salmon, was definitely one of my favorites for sure. I love, trout, and these fish live in beautiful locations, right? So I'm just lucky to be able to experience all these different locations, and they're all great. I love Australia. Was great. The salt water off the east coast, the Great Barrier Reef. It's just hard to explain what that's like. The New Zealand and the trout there, amazing. As I'm going through these, I'm trying to think about which one I like. Boy, I mean, the videos that I've done around Twin Bridges, like we were talking Montana and around the R.L. Winston Rod Factory there, like the Spring Creek fishing there that I've done with my friend Pete Corbett. Those videos, I probably enjoy those as much as I actually come back to watching them, just because I love sitting and watching fish. And today I'd be as happy as sitting there and watching as I would fishing. It's simple as that. Like I think a lot of people look at me like, you should go fish, and I'm like, I'm fine, I'm good. Like, let me just get the right shots and enjoy these fish sipping dry flies, bugs. So I don't know. This last year I did a video with my daughter Stella up in British Columbia that was super fun. It was really hard, but It was really tough for her because of the weather. And we went up, we kind of had it all dialed in. This is a Mother Nature thing. We went in August last year, and we had it kind of figured out that was prime time for like minimal bugs. The weather should have been good, but it just did a 180 on us. And we had clouds and rain and wind. She did great, but you just never know.
And does that become a different sort of story then when the weather intervenes or the fish aren't? But are you consciously thinking of that the whole time while you're filming?
Yes. And for that one, I was thinking like day 3, I was like going, I'm in deep trouble here. Like seriously. And I even have like Stella, my daughter, she grabbed my camera and she filmed me like pacing the bank on the lake, like gone. And she knew. She was like, great dad. So yeah, it changes everything. And then, I shoot when I'm on these trips, I don't fish, I'm there to work, so I'm shooting a lot, and luckily I'm shooting a lot because I came home and I kind of had to create a story once I was back and make it work. Cause it was so, there was just so many different parts and pieces that happened, but little pieces here and there. It wasn't just one like nice sequence flow all the way through. But it worked. It was great. That's where the editing magic comes in,
And that's the creative skill, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, you've won a number of awards for your film work. And as you look back so far at what you've achieved and how you've helped define fly fishing filmmaking, when you look at that, do you smile a little bit as well?
Do I smile at it? Is that?
Yeah, the impact that you've had on filmmaking for fishing films.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. I love that, the amount of feedback I get through just emails and, if you go in on YouTube and just read the comments over the past, since 2008 or whatever, since I started it, but the emails that I get, it feels good because of all the people that I've actually gotten the itch to get out and go fishing. So it's just getting people into fishing, which is really cool to realize that, yeah, I've sparked, the spark was there because of my films to get people out on the water. And so that's great. That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
And
nice.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the main things, but then, it's great to hear from the same people over and over, they're just big fans. It's kind of weird going to places, and people have seen everything, and it's just cool. That's what the internet, if you can do it, and the people are on the internet, so they're able to watch this stuff from wherever, so it's pretty neat that way.
Nice. You touched on when you said you're filming something that you're focused, filming is what you're there to do. But has there ever been an occasion where you've witnessed an epic catch, tailing bones? You thought, oh man, I wish I had my rod.
Absolutely. 100%. And the problem is, there's a big problem with that, because as soon as I pick up a rod, as soon as I would do that, the shot of the whole week would happen and I would miss it right away. And so I've learned, I want to say I've learned my lesson, but I can't think back to where I legitimately like screwed up and did learn my lesson. But I know that, like, even if you got to go back in the bushes for a few minutes, and come back, you're going to miss something. So it's like, the situations or the instances that happened where I wished I was fishing, but didn't, there's definitely been times in Montana. There's definitely been times, like I did some work for Tourism Australia 2 times, actually. saltwater and down in Tasmania. Tasmania was unbelievable. Like, I would have loved to go out and fish. And they were like, you should go. Daniel Hackett was like, get out there, And I'm just like, no, there's just there's too much going on here. There's too much coolness happening in front of me right now. I got to keep rolling. And I'm glad I did, because that Tasmania, if you guys haven't seen it, the Tasmania film's fantastic. There was one time that I did fish. This was with a friend, Brian Wilson, on the South Island of New Zealand. And he told me after this happened that he's only seen, and he grew up, he's like a legitimate West Coast of the South Island kid. Like, he grew up there. His dad was a helicopter pilot. They were doing shooting stags off the skids of these helicopters. This kid has seen it all. He's like the coolest guy. And we had one day, it was one of these ESPN shoots. I was down there actually on a hunting filming production for hunting, but we had one day. So I took one of the camera operators and we drove all the way over to see Brian Wilson. And we had one day, and Brian took us out to this river, and he didn't know this was just going to be normal. He wasn't like, oh, the hatches are going, it's not like it was like any day that was, different than his regular guiding day. He just took us out on a great river. But halfway through the day, this amazing mayfly hatch happened. And when you're in New Zealand, you walk from pool to pool and you're spotting fish, right? You might see 2 or 3 fish. And you're like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, New Zealand, the fish are big. And there's only 2 or 3 big fish in each pool. That's normally the case. And then you go to the next one, you see 2 or 3, or spook 2 or 3, right? These fish, there were more fish rising everywhere. Big fish. I'm not talking little guys. I'm talking, there were 3 to 4 pound fish rising all over the river. Like, they'd come out of the woodwork. I don't know what it was. And Brian Wilson was like, I've seen this one other time in my life. And so he's like, I was like, I'm fishing. So we had 3 doubles that day of that afternoon. It wasn't like a whole day. It was like 3 hours or whatever. But I got a double photograph with my buddy who we brought down, Bryant Blackburn, who I was with. And we got photos of doubles in New Zealand of big trout, on dry flies. That just, it was crazy. So that was one time where I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that sounds perfectly acceptable to me. Perfectly acceptable. Let's move on a little bit, and I'm sure many listeners already know of this publication, but let's go on to Catch Magazine. And it started in 2007, but how did it all come about?
Well, so I was in Montana and I moved from Missoula. So the transition, Kelly and I moved down to Oregon, and my folks lived in Oregon for 25 years or whatever. So we'd always go back, it was Oregon, Montana, whatever. And, we really enjoyed it down here. So I got a job at the local newspaper shooting video. And this is still pretty early back when, the internet was still slow and clunky, but it was there, so you could upload film, video to the internet. So I was working this night shift at the local newspaper. I knew Brian was living in Central Oregon. He had been living here forever. So we ended up getting together. And long story short, he was done repping. I was kind of like, I need to do something other than this nighttime job at the local newspaper. And there weren't really any other magazines, the online thing. We didn't really know of any online magazines really that have taken off and were doing heavy video and photos. So we decided, let's try it. Now, Brian, he's much older than I am. And so he wasn't going to be the guy to do all the web work. So that was me. And oh my Lord, it was a lot of work. It started in Adobe Flash. And I always say Flash because if you really know, Adobe Flash, to learn that language is just it's really hard. So the first year and a half was all in Flash, the page flipping. Just to get that page flipper to work was it was brutal. So that's how that started, and we wanted it to be, the paper magazines were still very, very like important. They were still all there. They were still all running, and so we were, with Catch, it was like we wanted to make a coffee table style book that was digital, and it was because Brian was a photographer, and he had been a photographer a long time, so we had that all kind of figured out. So we wanted to just make big photos, video, and that was pretty much it. Minimal text. We wanted it to be as global as possible. So captions kind of tell the story of the photo, or the photo just tells the story itself, So just concentrating on really good quality photography and big, like in your face. And then the bigger screens came out and it was amazing, So yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. There's a lovely story in the background that I've been thinking about, because you mentioned Missoula, and it's a place I like very, very much. And my foray into publishing started sitting on a rock in Rock Creek. And awesome. I said to my friend, I want to be able to share these experiences with people. And it's a special little stream, Rock Creek too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, fantastic! Just right outside of Missoula, like it's your dreamy creek, right? Yeah, it's great spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So when this first came out, how did that feel? Because you've done a lot of that backbreaking work putting the thing together. What was it like when you released it? And I'm guessing because of people like yourself and Brian behind it, it grew quite quickly too as a result of that. And like you say, it's incredibly striking, isn't it? That when you see it, and we'd seen nothing like it on the internet before, did traction happen very quickly?
I would say traction happened quicker than I thought, but it was, and it was free, right? So we, the main, it was the fun part about it was the Google Analytics, right? Figuring that all out, getting that, implemented into the, the code so it all worked, and just watching the globe blow up with all those dots everywhere. In Europe, it was huge. Like France, it was huge. It was just like, you take a gunshot blast to the map, and it was like everywhere. It took some time, but a lot of people were so into it because they hadn't seen it before, and it was a fun concept. The I can't remember phones 2007. I mean, we had them, but it wasn't. I don't even remember really working on it. Did work on a phone, but it wasn't like full screen. It was like really small because the flash didn't work well with it. But on the computer screens, it really worked well, and people really loved it. I think within the first 6 months, it really took off, and yeah, it was an eye opener, right? I think the biggest part of it was to get the hardest part, which I don't really understand to this day, but was to get the fly industries to jump on board. We had we had the analytics back then, and it was like, I don't know, the industry was just so, old school with everything. It was just hard that's where I come back to David and Daci and R.L. Winston, that company. He was on board from day one, and without even a question. And it just is like, that was a really good feeling. We've had a lot of great supporters over the years. Scientific Angler is one of them. They've just been a huge supporter. And Winston's been on board for a very long time, with a lot of others. And I just really appreciate those guys right off the bat understood it, And they can look back now on all those videos, that have millions and millions of views. They got to feel good about that, Jeez, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And for listeners, you won't be able to see this, but Todd is wearing an RL Winston cap right now, so he talks the talk and he walks the walk. But did you find then that that was like a domino effect, that once one company was behind you, then all of a sudden you mentioned Scientific Anglers, and I'm sure there was, or I know there are plenty of others as well. But did you find it just suddenly boom, 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 and everyone said, "Yeah, I'd like to be involved with this"?
Yeah, that did happen. I think definitely did happen. I think that with the marketing companies in the fly industry, they're even today, they're very cliquey, and you have your special brands that you work with, and that's it. I think that a lot of these companies have kind of blinders on, and they're just like, okay, this is what we got to do. And the turnover of the marketing companies and the people that work in marketing is unbelievable. It's like once you got it rolling, it's like they're gone and moved on to some other industry. It's crazy, honestly. I think it's hard these days with the marketing and the social media, keeping up with the social media aspect of it all. It's hard to keep to just stay focused as a marketer. Because it is hard. It's time consuming. But I think over the years they've seen. I get a lot of offers to do stuff these days, whether it's with gear or, filming opportunities. So I think, it's taken a long time, but right off the bat, it happened. It happened pretty quick with a good handful, and we didn't want a magazine that was full, like ad after ad after ad. That was another thing. I mean, I think we were shooting ourselves in the foot with that, but we wanted like a good, solid handful of advertisers. And we didn't want it just, plastered with ads everywhere. So,
yep, that makes perfect sense. And were you proud to have broken new writers stroke photographers as well? Were there people that had sent you stuff who'd never been published before that you published their work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had for many, many years, we had a photo essay we called Introducing, and it was introducing new photographers. And there's been so many, and there's a lot, there's so many photographers that were found and catch that are big today. I mean, I'm trying to think. Well, Bozeman guy, Brian Gregson, I remember him getting back to us a week after I think it was a week or two after that he was introduced in Catch Magazine, and he got an Audi opportunity. Audi contacted him from seeing the cover of Catch Magazine, and he got a huge job from that. So that actually, I'm surprised I just remembered that all, but that was a long time ago. But that was, I couldn't tell you what issue that was, but we used one at Brian's covers or photographs for a cover, a winter scene, and Audi contacted him shortly after for a big gig. So stuff like that, it's really
nice.
Cool.
And is that, I get a sense with the people that you have in there, and some of them have been on the podcast as well, but is it a band of photographers and you know each other or you know of each other, and it's not competitive? I guess that's the case, that you're all willing each other on and speaking to each other.
Yeah, I think today there's so many, right? There's just so many photographers, but you still there is that difference, and between the veterans and then all the new photographers, and with the equipment now that's so good, it's like I'll talk to a lot of photographers and I'll contact them, or they'll send me, photos, and then they'll tell them, I'll read their bio, and it's like, yeah, I've been shooting for 2 years. It's just like, whoa, like that's amazing. Like, and then, you see their equipment and it's just, the best of the best. So, I think a lot of them do talk, and, everybody's friends, but there is to get these jobs, if you're trying to make it happen, it's a little cutthroat. You've got to kind of be a cliquey kind of person with a group and kind of work for them and be with them, instead of trying to do a lot with everybody because, like I said, these marketing companies have their favorites, and they don't want to have the hassle of trying to go find new photographers. If they're happy with one, they're just going to stick with that one. So trying to get in, especially in fly fishing, is tough.
So have camera phones, have that been, because in some respects it's great, and you touched on in social media that you can share stuff very easily, but does that also make that gap between what people like myself might be filming something or taking a few pictures, and then that makes that gap wider between what we're doing and what you're doing, so it isn't harmful in the way perhaps we might think?
Yeah, I think you're right about that for sure. I think you're right. I think there's, with the camera phones now, we've also I did a mobile view essay series for a long time back in, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, when the camera phones were just kind of, you're like, whoa, that's a shot from an iPhone. So we did essays, and they were actually pretty impressive. But the camera phones these days, they're so good. I mean, people are getting covers, like printed covers from camera phones. I mean, you got to really work the light angles right, but you can do it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think a camera phone's ever going to touch the quality of, a really nice photograph taken by a pro photographer, especially when you start enlarging it and blowing it up, it's just not, that quality is not going to be there. So yeah. there's going to be a gap. I think there's always going to be a gap there. Yeah.
Before we move on, as someone who released an online magazine and then moved into print, were you guys ever tempted by that?
I would have loved to be able to do that, but there's just no way. I just wouldn't have had the bandwidth. There's no way I would have had the money to do it. I think Catch Magazine, a paper version of Catch Magazine, would be unbelievable. Thinking back to all the photography that I have, throughout all the back issues. I mean, it could be, even if we would have done, we even talked about doing like one a year, like a best of. It would be amazing. So, not saying that it won't ever happen, but definitely not like quarterly or whatever. I just can't. There's just no way I could do it.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it when you spoke about that, like an annual or a best of. That would just be totally awesome. So if you do, put me down for it. But okay. I tell you what, we've talked about Winston, and in the UK, there is a small cult of people who are big fans of it. And I'm guessing it's a similar sort of case in Europe too. But how would you describe Winston to somebody listening? Because your long association and friendship with them, why do you love the rods so much?
I love the rods. I think it also has to do with how authentic this company is, where they are, where they're built, the people behind the company. I mean, when you think of just Twin Bridges, Montana, I mean, come on. Does it really get any better than that? And like we were talking before we, hit the record button about, it's a small place. It's Twin Bridges, and the factory's not big, and the work they do to push out these hand-built, handcrafted, rods is just, it's really mind-blowing, really. But the feel of the rod, over the years, they've changed that, they've changed the feel. The feel of the rods has always been, a softer, medium action feel when casting, right? And they've played around with some faster action stuff, and some of their stuff still is faster, is like medium to fast, which is great. But for what it is and where they're at, and I'm thinking of the single hand rods, like when I'm back there and we're fishing the spring creeks, there's really nothing like picking up a Winston rod and casting it with a 15 to 16 foot leader. It just doesn't get any better. I don't know. Maybe it's just being in Montana and knowing that they were just built right there. I just don't think that in the beauty of them, they're just beautifully made. But everything from the tip top to the butt section. It's like, you could literally put any of those rods in a frame, put it on your wall. It's really neat.
Like that a lot. Let's move on a little bit. And you've traveled to a lot of places. Has there been a place or a country that has really gotten under your skin?
I think, I always come back to New Zealand. That place is hard. That country, I don't know. There's something about it that it's just beautiful. People are beautiful. Rivers are gorgeous. The landscape's amazing. I don't know, that water clarity, there's something about being a camera operator and water clarity, and that water clarity there is just, it's hard to beat. So the freshwater water clarity in New Zealand is crazy, crazy clear, crystal, and you try to explain to people how clear it is, and when you're putting a camera underwater most of the time and it looks clear, you go back and look and it's like, whoa, this is not clear, right? But when you put you put a lens underwater in New Zealand in most of the rivers, you're like, wow, that's clarity, where you can see, 30 feet across or even all the way across the river, whatever. It's crazy. New Zealand's probably one of my favorite places. British Columbia, which isn't too far away from where I'm at, is really hard to beat. And I'm lucky, like I said, Pacific Northwest with Idaho and Montana, and Oregon's amazing. But New Zealand, if I was going on a destination, like flying a long ways, and it's a big trip. It's expensive to fly, and it's not something I do every even 5 or 10 years. But I've been there a few times, and it's pretty awesome.
And is there a place that you haven't visited that you'd like to tick off the list?
I was talking to a friend of mine at Winston, Adam, and he told me, I mentioned Japan, and we might try to put something together there. I'd really like to go there. I think everything that the rivers, the small streams there look amazing. The trout there, I love trout. So the trout there are just beautiful, and they're not very big, but it's fine, and the culture there that'd be all part of it. So I think that would be really cool. I'd love to go there. I'd love to do something. I'd love to film, make a T-motion film there for sure.
Nice. That's a nice one to have on the list.
Yeah.
As somebody who's helped shape us and how we view fly fishing through your work over the years, I was just wondering, how does fly fishing look to you right now?
Boy, how does it look to me? Well, it's funny, like you hear like there's not enough people in fly fishing and it's dying, or I hear stuff all over the board, but I see more people on the rivers these days. It's definitely busier, absolutely busier where I go out and work. The reason I keep bringing up Montana is because it's just where I go. I work with, Winston fairly closely, so I'm there every year, and like the spring creeks there, they get busier and busier. But people are learning more about how to take care of these fish and the water, and there's more talk about that. So, it's like, it's hard to say if it's all great or it's not, but I have a feeling there's more talk about everything and taking care of what we have today than it was, 20 years ago. Even though I think there's more anglers out there, I guess it's a good thing.
And do you detect that they may be younger anglers coming through too?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's
Cool.
younger anglers. There's definitely younger anglers, and they're all nymph fishermen. I mean, it blows me away that all the nymph fishermen on these small spring creeks that I fish, it's like, you guys don't get it. You're not, I did one video. I haven't spent a lot of time over in Europe or even like where you're from, but I did do a film with Tim Ray Jeff years ago, and we were on the test. We were on, and it's just so cool that I mean, those rules over there are hilarious. I mean, they're not hilarious. They're great because you can't do these things. You can't throw a giant indicator in there with a weighted nymph and a bunch of lead. It's like dry fly only upstream, or you're going to get in trouble. So I like that. That's cool. And I think I think you'd get some younger guys over there, and they wouldn't have any idea what to do. They'd be like, what? Dry fly on here? What? So yeah, there's definitely younger anglers, and maybe it's that transition that we were talking about earlier. It's just that they're just wanting to hook up. They're just wanting to get numbers and figure it out, and then they'll move into that that dry fly only type thing. Yeah, and actually I've been hearing more and more through the rivers and waterways around like Wyoming and Montana. They're pushing hard for more, single barbless hooks only, fly only sections. I think it's good because I'm definitely seeing more and more fish that are landed with their mandibles ripped, and it's just the fish are getting more beat up today, which isn't hard to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you say, the handling of the fish, I think, has come on in the time that I've fished quite dramatically, and that's wonderful to see. And the longer that happens and the more people adopt it, I think probably the better. I can't believe that we've been speaking over an hour now. And yeah. I just wanted to ask you the tricky question. You're perhaps driving from Oregon to Montana. You might be going down to the Klamath even as well, down that neck of the woods perhaps. And you're in the car. You've got a song that's going to set the tone for the journey. What is the song that would be the one that you'd kick off with?
Oh, gosh. That's an awesome question because, I'm kind of a music guy. I love music. I mean, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Sirius XM radio. It's like an online satellite radio thing that you connect to your car. So I'm really dialed into that, and I love listening to that because it's a lot of behind the scenes interviews with bands and artists, whatever. But I love all kinds of music, but the one that I probably hit the most is the Tom Petty radio because he plays all kinds of music on there. I'm trying to think of what song. Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, Tom Petty's got so many great songs. I love Gordon Lightfoot. I love the folk history of Gordon Lightfoot and what he's done. If you haven't listened to Gordon Lightfoot a lot, you guys got to dig into what he's got because that guy was an amazing musician and artist. But I don't know. The Waiting by Tom Petty is a good one to get cranking. There's definitely a lot of others just off the top of my head.
That's a lovely choice. And again, it ties beautifully for me. I was down there one time and I'd taken some anglers down, and a friend of mine who's been on the pod, actually, Vern Strader, we were driving back on the last day and I said, "What's this you're playing? It's really cool." It just suited driving along the Yellowstone, and it was Tom Petty. So that's how I got into him, again, because of Montana, which is super cool from that point of view. So we'll put that one on as well. So thank you for that. How about if people want to connect with you, if they want to follow what you're doing, the magazine, everything else? What are all the social and your contact details? How do people find you? How do they find the magazine? How do they find your video work?
Well, so the magazine's at catchmagazine.net. So if you go there, you'll see the magazine and the current edition and all that. You can go see older videos. The YouTube channel, I don't have all the videos on there because I leave a lot of videos on the platform side, but if you just type in Google, in the YouTube search Catch Magazine, you're going to find the channel and subscribe to it. Because then you get the notification when I upload more films. Social media is just Catch Magazine. It's all Catch Magazine. Yeah, it's all there. And emails, info@catchmagazine.net if you want to get a hold of me, or just message me through social media. I'm usually on it quite often. Kind of like I wear a lot of hats, so you'll get me.
Nice. That is fantastic. Well, Todd, I'd like to say a massive thank you for talking with me today, but also a thank you for what you've done as well, because it's quite extraordinary. And I would urge listeners to go and have a look. I'm sure most of you will know Todd's work, but go take a look at it, because as I said earlier, it shaped us as fly anglers. So please, please, please keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear. I appreciate it. Appreciate the support, Pete. This is really awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd, very much indeed. Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. As ever, there'll never be any charge for these. I just love speaking to people like Todd and learning a little bit about their lives and sharing that with you as well. So, as ever, there'll be plenty more coming very, very soon. But thank you so much for listening to the Fly Culture Podcast.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.